Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In my last video, I covered the time-traveling paradox of the butterfly effect with Ashton Kutcher. All of you seem to enjoy that, so I figured why not take a look at another one of my favorite examples of time travel. The show Travelers from 2016. This show has 3 seasons and is probably one of my favorite shows of all time. The plot is kinda similar to The Terminator, traveling back in time to stop a post-apocalyptic future from happening. This isn't normal time travel though. They can't send a whole person back, but they found a way to send back their consciousness. But there's all kinds of rules about who they can overwrite and what events they can change without negatively affecting the future. The show ended after 3 seasons, but has received great praise from critics and fans. How great? 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8 out of 10 on IMDb. I don't always agree with critics, but we can agree on this one. Let's take a look at the time-traveling paradox of the show Travelers, how this method of time travel works, and some unforeseen consequences. If you enjoy videos about time travel and other movies, leave a like and subscribe for new videos every week.
In our time, many years from now, humanity's been all but wiped out. We've come back to change that.
A couple hundred years in the future, the world is on the brink of destruction. It all began with a meteor named Helios that struck the Earth, causing mass devastation, killing 95 million people and knocking out the eastern seaboard. In the 2010s, humanity reaches a point of no return. Climate change causes the polar ice caps to melt, releasing ancient diseases that humans had no immunity to. There was mass migration into city centers, causing famine, war, and eventually collapse of the government and all of society. The remaining survivors fought over whatever resources were left, and this led to the use of nuclear weapons. In a few hundred years, the humans that are still alive live in underground bunkers, protected from the winter and nuclear fallout. Inside these shelters, the living conditions are extremely harsh. During the show, we learn that they live off a diet of yeast and water that's been recycled 10,000 times. Philip says it's been reused so many times, it can never be totally pure. We get to see some memories and flashbacks of the people from the future, and they seem to all have shaved heads and very dirty, ragged clothing. Apparently these shelters had some kind of clear dome that allowed sunlight inside, but due to the nuclear winter, they would eventually be covered by snow and ice. These shelters were built somewhere in Canada close to the American border. Eventually a massive catastrophe happens in Shelter 41. Due to the weight of the snow and ice, the roof collapses, killing thousands of people. It's not clear how many of these bunkers there are, but since number 41 collapsed, we know there's at least 41. The shelters were originally made to house 10,000 people, but we learned that most have double that. They are also powered by faulty nuclear reactors that are barely functioning and require constant upkeep. This reminds me of the post-apocalyptic show from Apple TV where they also have some kind of giant nuclear generator. Although it's very hard to survive in the future, the people have still made technological advancements. The people of the future are led by someone known as a director. But actually, it's not so much of a someone, but a something. The director is an advanced AI. It basically functions like the president of the future. But president doesn't quite describe it, it's almost like a god. The director was programmed to value human life at all costs, and it will expend every possibility before killing someone. The director is an AI, but not like ChatGPT. It's a quantum AI. It's theorized that a quantum computer will be millions of times faster than the fastest processors we have today. The director comes up with something known as the Grand Plan, an idea to save the human race from extinction. It also figures out a way to send people's consciousness back in time using quantum entanglement. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on quantum mechanics, but I do know that through quantum mechanics, particles can communicate with each other over insanely huge distances instantly through quantum entanglement. Being able to send information over this vast distance so fast either means they can send information faster than the speed of light, or time is of no consequence. Somehow the director used this to figure out how to send someone's consciousness back into the body of another person. This is called being overwritten.
Till what?
In the future, we've developed a technology that allows a traveler to project his or her conscious mind to a host body.
Now this is basically murder, because when someone is overwritten, that previous person is gone forever. Because the director cannot take human life, it finds a way around this. Using historical records and data from the internet, it can search through and find the death records of people. and it will only overwrite the consciousness of people who were supposed to die. It will find someone who, say, was supposed to get into a car accident and overwrite the person right before they make the mistake that would have got them killed and correct it. By doing this, I guess the logic is that the director is not affecting any events that that person would have done. They're only creating new events that were never there in the original timeline. Although the travelers are still affecting everyone around them, so this doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're already getting into the hard to grasp time travel stuff. One of the travelers sent back goes into the body of FBI agent McLaren, who died of falling down an elevator shaft during a power outage. Just before his death, he is overwritten and becomes a traveler, completing missions for the director to positively affect the future. It appears to be quite painful for the subject who's being overwritten, and the travelers do confirm it is painful, but only lasts a few moments. From what we see in the show, it appears that people get a severe headache and ringing in the ears, and then the new person arrives. Just to be clear, it's painful for the person being overwritten, not for the traveler arriving. People who are sent back are called travelers. They are usually sent in teams, and there are thousands of travelers all around the world. The main team in the show consists of 5 people: the team leader Grant McLaren, the medic Marcy, the engineer Trevor, the tactician Carly, and Philip, the historian. Each member has special training in a specific skill. Possibly the most interesting is Philip, the historian. These are people who have been trained since a child and specifically picked to be a historian. Philip even hints at the idea that they have been modified in some way. This is because they can remember an insane amount of knowledge. They have to know betting odds to get money, all the deaths of possible traveler hosts, all significant news events, and many more things. Recipes for special drugs from the future, plans to build special components, the list goes on. They can recall all of this knowledge at any time. They are possibly one of the most important members of the team. Another interesting character is Trevor. He is the engineer, but the more interesting part is that he's possibly the oldest living human in history. He was one of the first volunteers for the consciousness transfer program and has been in multiple host bodies. This tells us that possibly after the host body dies, their consciousness can somehow be sent back. Sometimes there's unintentional consequences of overwriting. The director does his best to choose the candidate for overwriting, but every once in a while something goes wrong. Philip's host turned out to be a drug addict. This happened because his parents were embarrassed that their son was a drug addict, so they covered it up, saying he died from his first time using. Therefore, when Trevor arrived in his body, he had a horrible addiction that he had no idea about. Another host that had a problem was the medic Marcy. At some point, this host got brain damage from a medical experiment gone wrong. Everything in the historical record said that she was a normal girl, so when the traveler arrived in her body, she began having seizures. This was because she had a fully functioning consciousness and a damaged brain. This is one reason that the AI is so important, to try and calculate as many risks as possible. But even then, there is mistakes. The AI known as the director is extremely important to the consciousness transfer machine, even though they are separate. In order for consciousness transfer to be successful, they must have something known as a TEL. This stands for time, elevation, longitude, and latitude. They must have all these absolutely exact for the overwrite to work. They use historical data, cell phone GPS, and more to pinpoint locations and time. Once again, historical records are not always accurate though. If the TEL is off by even just a little, a misfire will occur. When this happens, the host is fine, but the traveler's consciousness will die. We see this happen at least once in the show when they try to overwrite someone in a speeding car. The team says it probably happened because it was very hard to pinpoint that location. In the first season of the show, the travelers go back and use a piece of future technology to redirect the meteor Helios. This doesn't save the future like they thought it would though. 2 people that were supposed to die in the meteor strike go on to invent a kind of singularity power generator, able to harness the rotational power of a singularity, aka a black hole. This technology goes on to malfunction and kills 1.4 billion people and destroys the Earth's ozone layer, leading to a similar nuclear winter where they still have to live in the bunkers. They soon realize affecting the future will be a lot harder than they thought. I guess in a weird way, the travelers could be like a casual loop paradox. They are causing different events every time that still lead to the same outcome. Humankind on the brink of extinction and living in shelters. Now we can talk about the rules of time travel and how they try to avoid paradoxes in the show. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job. I want to start with the difference between a casual loop paradox and a method of time travel that creates a new timeline. The concept of time travel has had many different iterations. Among these, two prominent ones stand out: the casual loop paradox and the creation of new timelines. Both concepts offer unique consequences of time travel. A casual loop paradox occurs when an event in the past is caused by an event in the future, creating a loop in time with no clear origin. The casual loop is a closed system, with the events repeating in a cycle, rendering any changes to the timeline impossible. I used this example in my last video, but it's like the movie Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Harry is almost killed by the Dementors, but is saved by a mysterious wizard. Later in the movie, he travels back in time, and he was the wizard who cast the spell. But how could he go back to save his own life if he would have died in that scenario? He never would have had the opportunity to travel back in time originally. On the other hand, the concept of creating new timelines proposes that any action taken by a time traveler in the past results in the branching off of a new alternate timeline. This theory aligns with the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. According to this theory, each decision or event leads to the creation of a parallel universe, where each possible outcome is realized in its own separate timeline. When a time traveler alters an event, they are not changing their original timeline, but rather creating a new one where the altered events play out differently. This theory allows for multiple timelines to exist without interfering with each other, therefore avoiding any paradoxes. The difference of these two concepts is their treatment of causality. The casual loop paradox assumes a single, unchangeable timeline where events are predestined to occur in a specific sequence, creating a loop. Again, this is just like Harry Potter or the butterfly effect. In the butterfly effect, we see a strange drawing in the beginning of the movie. Then later, he draws this drawing to prove to someone that he can time travel, meaning that he was always predestined to make this drawing, and he couldn't actually change any of the events. Any attempt to change the past within this loop merely contributes to the unfolding of those pre-existing events. The creation of new timelines suggests a more dynamic model of time, where each alternation spawns a new distinct timeline, allowing for multiple realities in a situation where you can actually change the course of history. I think Travelers falls into the type of time travel that creates new timelines. When something in the past is changed, the original shelters don't cease to exist. The original timeline is still there, but now there will be a new timeline of people that remember the new events. Sometimes when travelers meet, it's like the Mandela effect, where they have completely different versions of history. One says Fruit of the Loom had a cornucopia, and the other is wrong.
Let's begin.
We're told that there's travelers that get abandoned in timelines, and this is called Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega is used when a timeline has either been successful or is doomed to fail no matter what they do, so all travelers can live out their days however they see fit. This would also mean that the people in that future are doomed to die. I was thinking about it, and it would almost be like every time a traveler is sent back, there's another director. The director sends someone back. That person alters events, creating a new future. Then that new director would send someone back to alter the new timeline, changing the events again, creating a new director over and over. At this point, there could be an infinite number of timelines and directors trying to fix them all until eventually one is successful. But if there's infinite timelines, then most likely more than one would be saved. It would make sense if there was technically infinite timelines, because this is what quantum mechanics suggests. And that's what the entire premise of the show is based on. Warning, I'm gonna give some big spoilers for the show here, so if you don't want to hear them, fast forward a couple minutes. At the end of the show, we see a screen that says, Traveler Program Version 1 failed. Version 2 begin. The director would know the first Traveler program failed because somebody sent a message to the future. But how would the director know what to do differently if it has no knowledge of what happened? Because this would be an entirely new timeline. Also, what if they changed the timeline in a way where the director was never invented? I guess this still wouldn't be a paradox because they're from a different timeline. At one point in the show, the historian Philip is taking some kind of special drug from the future to help with his historian abilities. He starts being able to see multiple timelines at once, suggesting that there is an infinite number of timelines all happening at the same time. The multiple timeline theory can explain almost everything in the show, but there's one thing I could not wrap my head around, and that's how did they send Trevor's consciousness back multiple times? Once Trevor is in the past, how could his consciousness be sent back to the future? Or, when the host body dies, does the consciousness get sent back through quantum entanglement? If that was the case, then the Traveler would be going back to the original timeline, not the one they changed, because their body wouldn't be in the new timeline. There's a few times where the director is able to resend someone's consciousness back into a body, but even if the director could repackage his consciousness and send it back again, there would be no way he would have his memories from the previous host. But he does. The new director of each timeline should have no knowledge of any host from a previous timeline, because those events technically never happened. I don't know if any of that made sense to you guys, but this is the one part of the show that I couldn't comprehend at all. If you have any ideas, please let me know. There's another way the show protects itself from paradoxes. The director can't send somebody further back than the most recent Traveler. This means that they can't redo the same event over and over again. That's my video on the show Travelers. I pretty much just wanted an excuse to talk about one of my favorite shows, so I hope you enjoyed. If there's any other movies or TV shows you want me to take a look at, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm thinking of taking a look at the time-traveling paradox of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I promise this channel is not going to be all about time travel, but I just figured why not keep the theme running until I run out of my favorite shows and movies. If there's any other movies or TV shows you want me to take a look at, please leave them in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.